Hello and welcome to Conversations with Carrie. I'm your host, Carrie Adlington, empowerment coach and sound healer. And tomorrow we have our first ever sound healing session of the year. I'm so looking forward to this, and the theme for this month, January, is connection. And I'm really pleased that it's actually worked out this way, that connection is the way we start the new year. Because connection is to me, is like the foundation of everything. But when we think about connection to self especially, when we're fully grounded and centered in our bodies, when we're not afraid of being in the moment, whether it's a pleasurable one or a not so pleasurable one, maybe even a scary one, we know we can handle it. And connection to me is really about self-love. It's about expansion of our inner self, of our true self. Sharon Pearson calls it my I amness. I sometimes refer to it as beingness. It's the stuff, it's the spark, if you like, that lights up the eyes. It's the stuff that's happening behind the scenes that we can't even see. It's the thoughts that think the thoughts. It's the I that says, I thought such and such. It's that part of us that we want to connect to. Because we're not our thoughts. We're the consciousness that thinks the thoughts and has the feelings and moves the body in whatever form we've come to this time, this place in. And specifically, tomorrow's session will be focusing on connecting with our core. Now, our core, as I see it, is that essence of us. And as Stephen Kessler puts it, he likes to think of it as, and I've heard this in a few places as well, but Stephen Kessler's the last one that I heard this from. And if you imagine that you've got a rod or a ray of light shining from the top of your head down through your body, going through your throat, close to your spine but not right on your spine, going right down through your perineum, at the base of your body, of your torso and abdomen, and then going straight down into the ground. If you can imagine that is your core. That's like the central part that runs through all of you. And what we want to learn is how to bring our attention inward to connect with that part of us. We can choose to direct our attention anywhere. However, when we direct our attention inward, that's a constant. We're always with ourselves. We're never, we can sometimes dissociate and be out of our bodies, to be fair. However, we need our body, and so we will always have our body until we leave it. So we want to focus our attention inside of us, the internal. Now, when we don't do that, what happens, and this is why it's so important that we do this, what happens when we don't do this is that we have our monkey mind. I don't know if you've ever heard of this phrase, a monkey mind, or you can think of it like a little excited puppy, and it's chasing the ball. And then it wants to play with the tug, and then it wants to go and jump over something, and then it wants to bowl you over and lick you, and then it wants to be over here and then over there and run here and there and everywhere, right? It's a complete chaos, leaving mess everywhere, doesn't know what to focus on. You're overwhelmed because it's uncontrollable. When you train the puppy, when you train it to listen to you, to sit at command, to lie down when you want it to have its full attention on you when you want it, to play when you want it to play, to walk when you want it to walk, to leave that person who's just walked in through the door alone. That's the power of being able to focus internally on our core. Because otherwise, we are just here, there and everywhere. The next shiny object, the next piece of information, because we feel like we don't know enough already. It can be the next piece of gossip that we hear. It can be the most intense feeling that we're experiencing right now, or an intense feeling of pain. It could be a story that we've got coming up, like a story from the past, or a story we might be making up about the future. It can be anything in our environment that's grabbing our attention. And what Stephen Kessler says is that wherever we focus our attention determines our experience. So imagine that. If your focus is like the puppy and it's here, there and everywhere, what's your experience of life going to be like? What's your energy levels going to be like? I know from experience, when I've been like that, it's been exhausting and overwhelming. I've not known where to put my attention, not known where to put my focus. I've been like pulling my hair out thinking I'm not getting anything done. I'm trying to do all this stuff and nothing's happening. And feeling that frustration. Maybe you can resonate with that if you've had that experience too, of trying to do too much, not knowing where to focus, having a mind that's here, there, everywhere, in the past 1 minute, in the future the next, and the next minute it's going, well, there's this itch I've got, and what's going on with that, and on to the next thing, and it can be exhausting and overwhelming, and that can lead to, and as we know, a number of things. It can lead to us dissociating from our body, wanting to leave out of a room if there's a conversation that we don't want to have, because we don't have the energy reserves to deal with it, or we don't know how to deal with it, and we're making up stories about how it could go. We might get caught up in the other person. What do they need? How can I help them? Or how can they help me? Because I'm helpless over here. Or maybe it's about avoiding and like, oh, I'll go undercover. Maybe if I go and hide in my room, they'll leave me alone. Or maybe it's, well, I'm just going to let rip and let people have it because this is a scary world and I've got to take care of myself. No one else is going to do it for me, and I've got to make sure that I take care of me. Or maybe it's falling on the rules, following on those rules, letting them dictate where you put your energy and your attention. But that's still outside. When we bring our attention inside, it's like having our backs. It's like having that self-trust, knowing that actually I've got me. I don't need to worry about all that stuff so much, because I know that I can rely on me. I'm always going to be here. And bringing that. So allowing that to be a focus. What's happening. And it's being specific too, right? Because we're not looking at the whole body. We're looking at a specific portion of the body. We're looking at this particular area, which is the core, going from our top of our head down and out through our base. And it's a narrow diameter. It's not the whole body. We're focusing what we're perceiving. And if where we put our attention determines our experience, well, if our attention of distraction, of focusing perhaps on the negative, on focusing on the complaining, the stories, things that we're not happy with in our lives. If we place our focus there, we're going to get more of it, or we're going to notice more of it, because that's how our brains work. It looks for more of the things that you're already looking at. So it'll bring more of that to your attention. It will make what you focus on, or what you're tending to, expand in your mind. Doesn't mean that the other stuff doesn't exist. Of course it does. It's just that your brain is deleting those, distorting those, generalizing those, because it's saying, well, this is what's important to you right now, because that's what you're putting your attention on, so let's give you more of that. Conversely, we can do the opposite with positive things, with gratitude, finding things that we are truly, deeply grateful for in a world of chaos and change like we have right now. We can focus on the good, things that light us up, give us energy, things that we enjoy, and we'll get more of that. And that's in our external, right? Now, what happens then when we bring our intention inward to our core? What do we get to experience more of when we bring our intention internally to ourselves? I'll let you think on that for just a moment. Because what I think we get more of is more of us. More of who we truly are. Sure, you might go, oh, I notice more of the stories. You may. But you can also choose to go, okay, that story's coming up. Now, is that in my core? And if it's not in my core, then I don't need to focus on that right now. And come back to core. You might say, well, what is this core? I don't fully understand. You might be thinking, well, is it emotion? Is it sensation? Is it body? What is it? My understanding of the core is this. To me, core is about our beingness, our I amness, as Sharon calls it, Sharon Pearson. So our beingness, our I amness, our spirit, our soul. It's the part of us that is beyond the physical that we see. It's not that this is a vessel that we happen to inhabit. It's the spark that lights our eyes up. It's the I that thinks the thought. That's our core. And according to Stephen Kessler, this area, this core of this, or this rod, if you will, from our head down to our perineum, that area is kind of like where we're most us, because it's in the center of us. It's like where most of our energy would be circulating is in the center of our little world, I suppose you could call it. If you think of our body as a world, it would make sense to me, at least, that we would have a central point that perhaps we move around. And that's our core. That's where most of our spirit, our soul, resides. If you like to think about it like that, there might be other ways that you can think of this as well. There's no right or wrong way. But if we think about it in that way, then it's simply about becoming more of who we are. We're directing our energy into what is making, where most of this body is kind of sitting around, our center of gravity, if nothing else. So if we're focusing our energy on our center of gravity, well, maybe we become more stable. Maybe if we're focusing more of our energy where our energy perhaps needs to be for the vitality of our body, maybe we get more energy. Maybe by simply the fact, regardless of what it is that we're focusing on, but the fact we're focusing on a very specific area of the body, we are tuning and training our minds to become more attentive to one thing. We're training it to be able to attend to something, to become, to move its attention to where we want it to be at will, versus at its habitual will. Because it's all it is, it's only habits, and it's learned that it goes from here to there to the other. It's only habit. And we can break habits. I bet there's quite a few habits that you've broken over the years. And I bet there's some new ones that you've picked up that may or may not be so good. But habits can be broken and made. It just takes practice. Simply a skill. And it can be learned. So, just want to go into a little bit about what it's not. So, this focus of attention, it's not about, for instance, I mentioned before about feelings can come up with an intense experience and grabbing all of our attention. And you might say, well, okay, so maybe for me to move my attention, I have to ignore what I'm feeling. It's like, it's not about that. It's not about ignoring what's happening, but it's about being aware of it and making a choice. Now, when we feel something, if we just simply ignore it, we're suppressing it, and that's going to cause us issues. It's important to be aware of it, to acknowledge it. And there's two things that you can do. There's one thing you can do in that situation is train yourself up so that when that happens, you can move your attention consciously with awareness and acknowledgement of your feelings. The second thing you can do is to actually help the emotion to shift through you. And I actually prefer this, to be honest with you, because when you are able to allow the emotions to come up and be released, and you build that muscle, at first it's hard. There's no two ways about it. If you think about a dam that has kind of been pressured, all this emotion that's been put in there and dammed up, and you imagine just trying to release just a little bit of that, it's going to come out in a spurt. It's gonna come out hard and fast. It's not gonna be comfortable. And so there's only going to be so much that you can tolerate at a time. So you'll do a little bit. I like to release. And I've got I uploaded this in the group, in the Empowered Women's Inner Circle group. And you can also download it from the website. So if you go to carrieadlington.com/shop, you'll find an overwhelm busting power pack in there, and there's a beautiful emotional release tool in there. And when you use that on a regular basis, it gets easier because the dam is getting lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. There's not so much pressure, and so it gets easier. There isn't this big when an emotion comes up and it's not so intense. So I highly recommend that and applying that when you can. It's not always feasible, it's not always appropriate, in which case that's when you'd want to go, okay, I see that I'm feeling this way, acknowledge it, be okay with it, and now I need to divert my attention to something else. But it's not ignoring, it's not stuffing it down. Don't want to feel that. It's not that. It's being much more loving, much more gentle, much more accepting of where you're at in that moment. I want to come and speak a little bit more about this too, because our emotions are so important. Because our emotions really, I think, govern our experience of the world. Of course, our attention affects those emotions, but how we deal with the emotions is really important. And if we have a tendency or a habit of ignoring the body, or even leaving the body because we don't want to feel what we feel, then this practice that we're doing tomorrow about connecting with our core really helps us to be safe in our bodies, to feel like it's okay to be in our skin. And it helps us to come into ourselves more and stabilize our core. Because if you can imagine a core of your being and you're not wanting to be there, you can imagine how weak that will be, because the energy isn't there to hold it. So when we bring our energy in, we stabilize ourselves. We're able to center ourselves more easily. We're able to ground ourselves more easily. And this is something that can be perceived and felt. When we're more in our bodies, we become more radiant. It's really noticeable. And another pattern that we may tend to go into is getting lost in emotions and stories. And I can say, hands up, this is I've done both of these patterns, so I know them all too well. And this one is about where we get so embroiled in our emotions, in the energy of them, and the stories that go on. And the stories can be things like, it's their fault, they've made me feel this way. It can be shame, I'm such a bad person. It can be, I'm not enough. If we are going through that, again, it's good to come back to, again, this is in that the beautiful overwhelm busting power pack. It's good to come to the perceptions of the body, the sensations, the colours, the shapes, whether it's large or small, textures, or even, is it hot, cold, is it particularly prickly, is it moving, is it slow, is it still, is it numb even? So you can go through a whole range. Now I've actually listed those out in there as well, and that I've included that as part of that particular tool for releasing emotion. So it's really important. Again, when we do that, we come back more and more to our core, which is so important. So I just want to really reinforce that bringing your attention to core, learning how to keep doing that in a consistent way, is one of the most important skills we can ever learn. Because that's where our attention goes, determines our experience, your experience. So wherever your attention goes determines what happens. Not so much what happens in the external world, but how you experience it, how you interpret it, how you respond or react to it. And although you don't have control over your attention to begin with, you can learn it. It's a skill. And learning that skill will then start to determine how your life and inner experience go moving forward. It is really exciting. And the great news is that with each sound healing session that we do, and the sound vitamins that you have in between, because every week I'll give you sound vitamins, so a little bit of homework where you can build up a daily practice using sound. And you can use that as an opportunity to focus your attention, and in this particular case this week, bringing your attention to your core. Now you might play with attention and have it doing slightly different things, but this week we could use that sound bite, if you like, or that sound vitamin, and bring it in to the body and see how we can move it. Perhaps we'll talk more about this tomorrow. We'll see what comes through when I share this with you. But what's coming up right now is that we can perhaps see how we can move the sound from the top of our head down to our base chakra and back up again, and perhaps feel that. Or maybe we pick a certain part of our core and see if we can expand it. Maybe we start in the center and expand outwards. It could be simply something that you play with as you play with the sound, and notice how it resonates in your body as you start to explore what connecting with core looks like for you. Now, for those of you who are listening to this on the podcast, know that one of the reasons I'm sharing this with you today is because it's not too late to join the class. The class is tomorrow, 4 p.m. NZ time. If you would like to be in it, and I highly recommend it if you do, you can join our 2-week 14-day guest pass to tap into power, completely free of charge. Have access to the next 2 weeks. You get 2 sound healing sessions and a coaching workshop, plus you can purchase something from the shop for absolutely free, and you get a really good feel for the community, for myself, see if it's something that you'd like to experience more of. And I'd love to see that. I'm on a mission this year to help as many women as I can receive affordable sound healings and coaching in a beautiful, safe environment. So I'm looking forward to seeing you there. If this is resonating with you, I'll pop the link in the description, and I look forward to seeing you, if not in the class tomorrow, then on the next podcast. Have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and have an amazing 2022, and let this be the start of an amazing and incredible new year as you bring your attention to your core. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.